Hello students, hope all of you are safe at home. I think in the earlier videos we have learnt about the sense organs, in which we have learnt about the eye followed by human ear. Children, I have forwarded the notes for circulatory system A and B. There is no need to write the location and functions in your classwork. It is only for you to learn. So learn the locations and functions as I have given, but write the suitable give reasons in your classwork. If you are really confident about certain answers for the reasons, you can write using the pen. If you're not sure, you can use the pencil and write it in the classwork. Along with that, I have given the list of diagrams to be drawn. So with relevant to that particular chapter, try to draw the diagrams for the circulatory system followed by excretory system. Yes, children. Now let us start with the next chapter of human physiology, that is endocrine system. As the name indicates, here the endocrine system comprises a number of glands. It comprises the glands which perform a number of functions in our body. Children, so when you just listen to the word glands, probably you have learnt the same word in the earlier years. Now, let me differentiate the glands that you have learnt in the earlier years and the endocrine system, which comprises the endocrine glands. I think in the earlier year we have learnt about the sweat gland, or what do we call it as a salivary gland found in the oral cavity, sweat gland in the skin. Fine. Then we recently learnt about the lacrimal gland found in our eyes. Children, these glands, what we have learnt in the earlier years, are different from what we are going to learn in the endocrine system. So these glands, what we are learning in the endocrine system, are known as endocrine glands. So whatever we have learnt in the last year, we name those glands as exocrine glands. So in the endocrine system chapter, we are going to learn in detail about the endocrine glands. Now, what are the differences between the exocrine and endocrine glands? Here, children, in the outline of the human being here, within that you can find a number of glands which I have drawn, which are found in different parts of our body, which are nothing but the endocrine glands. Now let us learn the differences between the exocrine and endocrine glands. As the name indicates, exo means out, endo is inside. Children, just recall about the sweat glands. We know that the sweat glands have a sweat pore which are opening on the epidermis of the skin, and this sweat is poured out of the sweat glands through the sweat pore. So just below the sweat pore we find a duct. What do we call it as a sweat duct? So in the dermis of the skin we find the highly coiled structure, that is a secretory part which secretes the sweat. Right? How about the salivary glands? We know that there are three different kinds of salivary glands, right? all the salivary glands have a opening, which are opening into the oral cavity. They too have a duct. What do we call it as a salivary duct? And then we find the highly coiled salivary glands found under the tongue, very close to the ear, and so on. And recently, if you remember, we have learnt about the lacrimal glands, which are found on the upper sideward portion of the orbit, right? Which has 6 to 12 lacrimal ducts, which pours the tears into our eyes. Right, children? Now, it is not only these examples, there are a number of examples. In fact, in the entire alimentary canal, we find the exocrine glands such as gastric gland, intestinal gland, even our liver. Okay, children? Even just recall, from the liver we find the hepatic duct which arises carrying bile juice into the duodenum, right? Which carries the bile juice into duodenum, helping in the digestion of food. In the same way, we find the pancreas, which has a pancreatic duct pouring out pancreatic juice into the duodenum. Okay, so these are the examples of the exocrine glands. Children, if you observe, all the exocrine glands have one common feature, that is, they have a tube-like structure. They have a tube-like structure to pour out their secretion into the organ. Right? So, you can say that all the exocrine glands have a duct to pour out their secretion, maybe in the form of saliva, in the form of a tear, or in the form of a sweat, into the organ, which is very, very close to its location. So, for the sweat gland, the organ is epidermis of the skin, which is very, very close to the gland. Right? In the same way, for the pancreas, it secretes the pancreatic juice into the duodenum, which is very close to the pancreas. Right? Now, this organ to which the pancreas secretes the pancreatic juice, I can name it as a target organ. So, what is the meaning of a target organ? Organ into which the secretions are poured. So, for the pancreas, a target organ is duodenum, which is very close to the pancreas. In the same way, liver secretes bile juice into the duodenum, which is also can be named as a target organ, which is close to the liver. Right? So, you can say that all the exocrine glands have a ducts to pour their secretion, and their organs onto or into which they are poured out are very, very close to the gland. Okay, children? Okay? Now, what about the endocrine glands? Children, endocrine glands are basically the ductless glands. They are basically ductless glands. They do not have a duct as we have seen in the exocrine glands. They do not have a duct. Now take an example. This is the thyroid gland, which is found in the neck region. You don't find the duct. They are the ductless glands. Okay, and then they pour their secretions directly into the bloodstream. So you can say that all the endocrine glands secrete the substance, and the substance secreted by the endocrine gland is known as a hormone. So thus you can say that hormones are directly poured into the bloodstream. They are directly poured into the bloodstream. Okay, children. Now, they have their target organs. They have their target organs in which they have to bring about a change which is very, very far away from their source. Now take an example. We have a thyroid gland in the neck region, right? It secretes a hormone known as a thyroxine, and one of the function of a thyroxine is to help in maintaining the body temperature or helping in the cellular respiration. Though it is secreted in the neck region, the hormone is circulated to all the parts of the body, to all the cells of the body to help in the cellular respiration. Fine, children. Along with that, thyroxine also helps in the ossification of bones, that is in the growth of our bones. So, though it is found in the neck region, the hormone secreted from the thyroid gland circulates throughout our body, stimulates our bones to help in the ossification or help in the increase in their size. Right? So thus you can say that the target organ for the endocrine glands are far away from their origin. Okay? Just now I taught you, in case of exocrine glands, the target organs are very, very close to their origin. But in case of endocrine glands, the target organs are far away from their source. Fine, children. So these are certain differences between the exocrine and endocrine glands. Now, there are number of endocrine glands in our body, but as per the syllabus, we are going to learn only few endocrine glands. Okay? Now, before we could learn about the endocrine glands, let us learn about the definition of hormones. Definition of hormone, which can be expected for about 1 mark. So how do we define the word hormone or hormones? Hormones are the secretions from endocrine glands. They are the secretions from endocrine glands. Children, you can also write it as ductless glands. So hormones are the secretions from the endocrine glands which are directly poured into the bloodstream, and act on target organs, away from their source. Children, so how do we define the word hormone? Hormones are nothing but they are the secretions from ductless or endocrine glands which are directly poured into the bloodstream, okay, and act on the target organs which are away from their source. Children, this is one of the question asked for about 1 mark. You cannot miss out the word ductless gland or a bloodstream. Okay, so how do we define the word hormone? Hormones are the secretions from the endocrine glands which are directly poured into the bloodstream and act on the target organs which are away from their source. Children, now let us learn certain endocrine glands what we have in our body, right? So children, learn this definition as it is, right? Now, in our head region, or recently if you remember, I have taught you about the hypothalamus of the brain. At the base of the hypothalamus, we find one of the endocrine gland known as a pituitary gland. One of the gland known as a pituitary gland, which is a master gland which controls all the other endocrine glands of the body, right? Now, the next one is the thyroid gland, which is found in the neck region, followed by pancreas. Children, just now when I was teaching you about the exocrine gland, I was mentioning about pancreas that secretes a pancreatic juice. Children, pancreas is a unique gland, or you can say it is both a exo followed by endocrine gland, or you can say it is a heterocrine gland. So as an exocrine gland, it secretes pancreatic juice. As an endocrine gland, it secretes the hormones. That is a specialty of pancreas found in our abdominal region. Children, just recall, we have learnt in the nervous system chapter that our body is able to face the situation like emergency situation where we have to either run away from the situation or fight with the situation, right? If you remember, our sympathetic nervous system is actually stimulated by the adrenaline. It's a hormone secreted by the adrenal gland. So just above the kidney, we find the one more gland known as adrenal glands, right? Along with that, in the females we find one more gland known as ovaries. So ovaries are the reproductive glands only found in the females, which help in the production of ova. Okay, so along with that, in males we find one more endocrine gland known as a testes, which produces sperms. So since it is an outline of a human being, within that I have represented ovaries, which are only found in females. Along with that, they have all the other glands. In case of a male, they have testes along with the other glands. So we call these two endocrine glands also as a gonads. Okay, children, these are the different endocrine glands that we have in the human beings. Other than this, there are even the other glands such as thymus gland, which is found just behind our breastbone, which is not in the syllabus, right? There is one more gland known as a parathyroid gland. Parathyroid gland, which is found behind the thyroid gland, which is not in the syllabus, but we are going to learn all these glands in detail. Fine, children? Yes. Before we could learn about each and every gland in detail, now let us learn about few characteristics of the endocrine glands or the hormones in detail. Fine. Hope you are clear with the differences between exocrine and endocrine glands, followed by the definition of hormone and the names of the endocrine glands. Children, now let us study about general properties of the hormones or few characteristics of the hormones. I think when I just taught you now the definition of a hormones, I think within that you have two features or two properties. Right? Now, what is the first property? Yes, children, hormones are secreted from their source. Right? So, where is it directly poured? So, it is directly poured into the bloodstream. So, what is the first characteristic of the hormones? So, hormones are secreted from the ductless glands directly into the bloodstream. Right, children? Okay. Now, they act on the target organs. They act on the target organs usually away from their source. Children, let me give you one more example. Just recall. Just above the kidney we find the adrenal glands which secrete adrenaline. Children, during the emergency or in case of emergency, the adrenal gland secretes the adrenaline which enables you to either flight or fight with the situation, as I have discussed in the earlier chapter, if you recall, right? So in that situation, what should happen? Your heartbeat increases. So more of blood is supplied to your legs so that you can run away from the situation, right? So from the liver, more of glucose is released into the bloodstream so that your cells will undergo cellular respiration to provide you the energy in order to fight with the situation or to run away from the situation. Children, though we find these adrenal glands in the abdominal region, right? The adrenaline secreted by the adrenal gland enters into your chest cavity, stimulating our heart to increase its heartbeat. It is carried to our legs so that our muscles get a lot of energy, right? The cells undergo a lot of respiration so that we are able to face the situation. So thus you can say that though the adrenal glands are in the abdominal region, it is secreted or it is carried to the chest cavity, it is carried to your leg region, right? Enabling you to fight with the situation. That is the reason I said hormones, when they are secreted, they have their target organs usually away from their source. Right, children? Now, they regulate a lot of or a number of physiological processes. They regulate our physiological processes. Children, what is the meaning of physiological processes? It is nothing but, come on, let us recall about the kidneys. Now, if you remember, antidiuretic hormone helps in the reabsorption of water from the kidney tubules. So, it means the ADH indirectly controls the functioning of our excretory system, which is one of the physiological process, right? So you can say that our excretory system is controlled or stimulated by the hormones, right? Children, think about your height itself. When you are in the LKG, what was your height, and now being in 10th standard, your height has increased. It means there is a increase in the number of cells, or what we find? We find the growth in our body. And growth is also brought about due to the secretion of these hormones. Right, children? Along with that, it also helps in, it also stimulates our alimentary canal to take up the peristalsis, or you can say that sometimes you feel hungry. You feel hungry because there are certain hormones which are stimulating our alimentary canal, which makes us to feel hungry. Right, children? And just now I said that the thyroid gland secretes the thyroxine, which helps in the growth of our bones. Right? So it means even our skeletal system is also controlled by certain hormones. Even the thyroxine helps in cellular respiration. So the cells take up the respiration, okay? So due to which there is a liberation of heat energy, right? So you can say that even that cellular respiration, which is one of the physiological processes, is also controlled by the hormones. So in general, you can say that hormones help in regulating the physiological processes like our excretion, our digestion, our growth, our respiration, so on, which you are going to study in detail in the later part of the lesson. Now, hormones produced in one species usually show similar influence even in other species. So children, in case if the hormone is extracted from the dog and that hormone is injected to the human being, okay, the hormone which is found in the dog brings about the same change even in the human being. Or if it is done in vice versa, the same effect is seen in the dog also. So that is the reason I said hormones produced in one species has a similar influence in the other species, though they belong to the two different species group, but hormones, when it comes to their function, they have a same function irrespective whatever the species is. Or even if the hormone of a dog is given to a calf, right, it has the same influence. Right, children? Now, and children, these hormones are produced in very small quantities. They are produced in a minute quantities. They are produced in minute quantities. Though they are produced in minute quantities, with that minute quantity they bring about a lot of change in our body. So even a small quantity is sufficient to bring about a lot of change. Maybe I can say 1 part of several million. 1 part out of several million is sufficient to bring about a change. Even if it increases by 2 parts, you can find a lot of changes in the function that is brought about by these hormones. So though they are produced in small quantities, they are very, very active. So what do we call it as? They are biologically active, bring a major changes in our body if there is slight increase in the secretion of these hormones. Okay. Now, what about their composition? Basically, what the hormones are made up of? Hormones, maybe they can be categorized as a water soluble hormones or a fat soluble hormones. Some of the hormones they are capable of dissolving in water. Some hormones dissolve in the fat, or they require the water or a fat medium to carry out their function. Some of the hormones are obtained from the proteins, or you can say that they are peptide in their nature. So chemically they are peptides which are water soluble, which dissolve in the water to carry out its function. And some of the hormones are amines, which are derived from the amino acids, where the peptides are derived from the proteins and the amines are derived from the amino acids. So some of the hormones are chemically made up of amines, which are also soluble in water, whereas there are certain hormones which are fat soluble, which are derived from the cholesterol, and they require the fat medium to carry out their function. So thus you can say that chemically some of them are peptides, some of them are amines, and others are basically fat or a lipid soluble hormones which are derived from the cholesterol, or we can also call them as steroids. Okay, now children, just now I said, though they are produced in small quantities, they are biologically active. Children, there are certain situations where in certain cases, if there is a hyposecretion, hypo means less secretion, or undersecretion. Now take an example. If there is an undersecretion of insulin, or a less secretion of insulin, or a hyposecretion of a thyroxine, or a hyposecretion of a adrenaline, it brings about a lot of changes in our body, or I can say that the human beings start suffering from a number of disorders, which we are going to learn in detail in the later part of the lesson. Right? So the hyposecretion or less secretion or undersecretion of these hormones brings about a lot of changes, or which leads to a lot of consequences in the human beings. What do we call it as a disorders in the human beings? Okay? Or if there is a more secretion or a hypersecretion or a excess secretion, also it leads to a lot of disorders in the human beings. Right? Now, hormones, basically, since they are made up of amino acids or proteins, hormones cannot be stored in our body. So hormones cannot be stored in our body. Once they carry out their function, once they perform their function, after performing their function, okay, these hormones are not stored in our body. They are regularly thrown out of the body. They are regularly eliminated out of the body. Eliminated out of the body. Right, children? So thus you can say that hormones cannot be retained in our body once they are made use. So after that they have to be thrown out of the body. So children, these are few characteristics of the hormones. Let us quickly recall whatever we have learned today. So endocrine system comprises a number of endocrine glands. So endocrine glands are the glands which do not have a duct, or you can say it has a ductless glands which pour their secretion directly into the bloodstream. Okay, and then they have their target organs away from their source, whereas all the exocrine glands have a duct to pour their secretion, and then they have a target organ very close to their source or their location. So these are some of the endocrine glands, such as pituitary, thyroid, pancreas, adrenal, ovaries in females, testes in males. Then few characteristics of hormones. So hormones are directly poured into the bloodstream. They act on the target organs which are away from their origin. They bring about changes in the physiological process. Regulate refers to either is increasing or retarding or reducing, right? So they bring about changes in our excretion, our cellular respiration, our growth, etc. Hormones produced in one species has a similar effect even in the other species, followed by they are produced in small quantities. Though they are produced in small quantities, they are biologically very active, and chemically they are made up of peptides, amines or steroids. Some are water soluble, others are fat soluble. Their hyposecretion or a hypersecretion leads to a lot of consequences or a disorders, and hormones cannot be stored in our body. They have to be frequently eliminated out of the body, children. So how about the definition of a hormone? Hormones are the secretions from endocrine glands which are directly poured into the bloodstream. So with this we just complete the introduction of endocrine system. So in the next video we are going to learn about in detail about one of the endocrine gland. Okay, children, be at home, take care, and regularly learn from the textbook. Okay, so that makes your learning more perfect. Okay, children, thank you.